Okay. Hello out there in book loving land. I am Amanda from Warwick's hosting today. Julie could not be with us today, hoping she'll be back soon. And I have a big, beautiful flock of reps today. I'm very excited to see what they have to talk about. And since we have so many folks, I think we should probably just get right to it. So it will go Andrea, Gabe, Patricia, and Julia. Tom said he might join us. We'll see. But that would be wild. That would be just
Too
fantastic.
late. You missed the deadline.
Gabe says no. So with that, I will let Andrea take it away.
Okay, can you allow screen share?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. I wanted to start out by talking about the latest from Muriel Barbary, who, of course, wrote the runaway bestseller, international bestseller of several years ago now, The Elegance of the Hedgehog. Her latest is basically the first part of this book in many ways. They can be read alone, but the first book explores a French daughter's trek to Japan to find her father. She is the product of basically a brief affair between a Japanese national and a French national, and she spends all of her time growing up in France with her mother. And the first book that came out in this series about I think a year and a half ago now, is A Single Rose, and I know I talked about that here. And this is 1 hour of fervor. So it was a very brief affair between the Japanese art dealer, elegant man about town. He basically is portrayed here as the most interesting man in the world. But he doesn't drink Modelo. He drinks Japanese whiskey and sake, no doubt. It's just so beautifully written, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's basically an exploration of what happens when you choose your friends over your biological family as your family, and what is lost and also gained with these sorts of choices, especially because there was a huge, a few oceans and a continent or two in the way between these two people developing a relationship over time. But it's just so beautiful. Let me see if I can find some quotes here. Barbary's beautiful descriptions of nature and her infusion of Japanese folklore and wisdom give her story an elegant and meditative quality. With its many poetic observations of life, this is a perfect novel for book groups. That's really nice. And all of the early reviews of this have just been very nice. We're happy about that. So Barbary continues her streak as just an amazing writer who's getting a lot of attention and love from readers. So, and that's from Europa, and $26 hardcover.
Do you know, has she always had the same translator? I'm curious.
I don't actually know that the answer to that question, but I do know that a lot of times I will have to check that. I'm not sure if Elegance of the Hedgehog is from the same translator, since that that was a while ago. But
yeah, it looks like she's done a lot of her books, so that's really cool.
Yeah, it is nice that when there's that continuity, for sure.
Yeah. And Beth Doherty has already started A Single Rose, just started it this weekend.
Oh, how exciting. Well, this is out tomorrow, Beth, so you can
how did you do that?
How exciting.
Definite trendsetter.
Yeah, and thanks for supporting Europa. They're a really great little publisher.
They really are. Cool, thank you. All right, Gabe, you're up.
I am up. And where's my stuff? I'm going to just start real quickly with Ed Scott Momaday passed away this week at 90. Some terrific stuff, but Housemaid of Dawn, if you haven't read it, the first Native American to win a Pulitzer and many other awards. So a real trendsetter. So I'm on the margins today, obviously. Today, The Survivors of the Clotilda goes on sale tomorrow. Oh, I didn't include the author's name in my title here. It's Hannah Durkin, who is a Brit academic. She's up in Newcastle, and she actually was like 4 or 5 years ago. She did a study of one of the last survivors, the last known survivor from woman who passed away in 1937, who was a survivor of the Clotilda. So the Clotilda, I'm getting ahead of myself, was the last slave ship to land on the shores of the United States in 1860. Slavery, the transatlantic slave trade had actually been outlawed for many years at this point, but slavery hadn't, and the very intrepid slave traders worked their way around the rules. So this was the last ship that landed in 1860. It didn't come from, it was Nigerians, people from that area of Nigeria. 110 people across the Middle Passage, and 103 survived. So this is the story of those 103, maybe not all of them, but quite a few of the what she could track down, and it's a considerable number of people. And there's an interesting history. These are the people who, I mean, it literally landed like 9 months before the Civil War started. So these are people that come kidnapped, brought to this strange country. They're immersed in this war that they have no idea about what's going on. And then the war ends 5 years later. They're out on their own. And then we go through Reconstruction. And what do these people end up going through again? Then we go through the 30s and 40s and the lynchings and that era as well. So these people lived a really interesting time and a really volatile time. And so this is what we're looking at, a really focused look at a particular group of enslaved people brought over right before the war. And some real poignant stuff. I think it's kind of current. 100 years ago, when I was a kid, 100 years ago wasn't that long ago. So it's an era of like modern history, and we have modern references, and people were actually like verbally recorded and stuff like that. So there's a lot to draw from with this research that she did, and really fascinating. Also, real quickly, it landed in Mobile, Alabama, and just like 5 miles north of Mobile, they created Africa Town. So not everyone, but I think something like 50 members created Africa Town, and it flourished into the 20th century. I don't know, flourished, it existed into the 20th century. So there's quite a bit of stuff that I had no idea about. I didn't know so much about this stuff, but fascinating reading and important stuff.
Very grateful for Amistad Press. They're awesome.
Really, really strong editorial direction there.
And that one's out
tomorrow.
February? Oh, okay.
Thanks for the shout out to N. Scott Momaday. That guy, such a national treasure.
National treasure.
Yeah. So
He's our New Mexico writer. Stanley Crawford also passed away.
What?
With the Wolf Moon. Almost, I think, possibly the same day. So it's been a day of losses for us here. Garlic Testament, of course, was also a Harper book.
I love the Garlic Testament. That was probably one of the first or second seasons that I sold you. I sold that to you, I'm sure, because I love that magpie. I love that story. It's a really, it was one of the first agrarian kind of books that I read.
Right. He had that agrarian philosopher quality as well as being quite an avant-garde writer.
Writer, yeah, it was a really fast, and I haven't
And
read
Mama
much.
Day, my goodness. I just called Dorothy at Collected Works, who's very close to Mama Day. And I have all your books, the recent ones. Wonderful.
Wonderful stuff.
Yeah, I want to pick up some of the new collections of poetry. I read a few like that I saw online today, and I definitely need to add those.
Mhm.
I'll send you Sitting Bear. That was the last thing that came.
And the little book you did about 2 years ago,
Mhm.
you showed it on the screen, but it's not right in my mind. The little fragments.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful book.
Yeah, that little tiny, Earthkeeper.
Earthkeeper. That's very precious. A wonderful
Yeah.
book.
Something to keep by the bed.
Your turn, Patricia.
Yeah, I don't have a screen to share. I'm just going to show you a picture of a book that's come out recently from Yale in a series, Why X Matters, in this case, Why Surrealism Matters, by Mark Polizzotti. He is a man who wears many hats himself. He is a great writer. He's written before on Andre Breton. He's a great translator. If you're reading Modiano, you're probably reading a translation by Mark Polizzotti. And he's also art director of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So all of our art books from the Metropolitan are under his direction. But here he's extremely deft about surrealism as a 100-year-old art movement, which seems still to be alive and well, subversive, constantly appropriating. He goes in every direction, artists, writers. He incorporates modernity that might just be wearing that hat. Monty Python comes to mind, but who thought he would address Thomas the Tank? And Hieronymus Bosch. And he has a large perspective on surrealism. It's essayistic and beautifully written. It's been very, very richly discussed. Lucy Sante is one of the endorsers, which is certainly wonderful, calling it the clearest, richest, most unflinching, and most wide-ranging survey of the movement I have read. Marianne Cause, I'm a great devotee of Marianne Cause, who writes so much on surrealism, also finds that it brilliantly conveys surrealism beyond the ordinary histories. It's fun to read. It goes in many directions. It has a wonderful bibliography, reminding us of things we might have forgotten, such as the fur-lined cup or the dripping mirrors, but a much deeper sensibility. It has chapters nicely done on transformation, subversion, transgression, of course, disruption and revolution, all words that might bring surrealism to mind. Out now.
I'm looking over Polizzotti's work, and wow, it looks like he does everything.
Yes, he really does. He's a marvelous translator and much praised. And when Yale began, just happened to have a Modiano novel at the time of the Nobel Prize, was a Polizzotti translation.
He also did Highway 61 Revisited in the 33 1/3 series, which is a series I love by Bloomsbury that goes over popular albums.
Maybe he can, I'll have to look it up in the index. Seems to me that you could find a little surrealism in some of Bob Dylan.
And I love that cover too.
Yes, it's very fun. All of a sudden,
cool.
I'm just wondering. Yes, he does, in fact, have references to Bob Dylan as a surrealist. I'm thinking of Blonde on Blonde and so forth.
Very cool.
That pillbox hat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Julia.
All right. Well, I have something different than what I normally get to share, which is poetry. Yay.
Yay.
So I have this new collection. It's out tomorrow by edited by Kwame Alexander. It's called This Is the Honey, an anthology of contemporary Black poets. And this is shockingly one of the first, if not the first, collection of contemporary Black poets. So people from Claudia Rankine and Ross Gay, you know, Nikki Giovanni, Alice Walker, all of these amazing Black poets, mostly American, but from all over. And it's just it's a gorgeous package. It's a gorgeous collection. Kwame Alexander, of course, is the author of Why Fathers Cry at Night, which was a New York Times bestseller, and has a new YA series that just started from us called the first one was called The Door of No Return. He is a stunningly good writer and the perfect person to sort of create this collection. And so yeah, Warwick's has it on the shelf. It's like I said, it's out today. And just this really it's a really like broad spectrum of poets is what I'm trying to say. And it's a really sort of amazing collection of poets. So if you're looking to get into more poetry, I feel like I didn't really get into poetry until I found the right person and found the right poet to start reading. And that sort of opened poetry up to me. This is a good one, and I think a good one to sort of cut your teeth on. So yeah.
Was it a specific poet you found your first?
Yes, for me it was Adrienne Rich.
Oh yeah.
So
good one.
Yeah, but I think, you know, and then that got me into people like Morgan Parker and some of the modern and reading some of like Hanifa Durraqib's poetry, or he wrote, oh sorry, what's his, I forget. I'm just gonna, Saeed Jones is who I'm thinking of, Prelude to a Bruise, his poetry. So it got me into that, but but yeah, for me, Adrienne Rich got me into poetry.
That's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, National Poetry Month is in April, but I just as year by year goes by, I think every month is becoming National Poetry Month. I think so many more people are paying attention to poetry, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, and Black History Month starts in a couple of days, so maybe it's a good thing to sort of appreciate sort of Black history and culture.
Cool. That was an excellent first round. Back to Andrea.
Okay, thank you. This is a book I talked about in hardcover, but it is out last week in trade paper, and I don't want anybody to miss this. It's Charmaine Craig's third novel, My Nemesis, and it's in trade paper now at $17 from the Venerable Grove Press. So this is from a SoCal author. Craig teaches at UC Riverside, and it's set largely in Southern California, but there's a little bit of jet setting back to the East Coast. And it's a departure for Craig in that she does a lot of historical fiction, and widely acclaimed, especially for Miss Burma, that was long listed for the National Book Award and the Women's Prize for Fiction. So she is no slouch. But this is a contemporary novel. It's a novel of ideas, and the rivalry between two women, that it all starts when Tessa, our protagonist, develops who's a successful writer, develops an intellectual crush on a scholar. And their exchanges create a lot of heat and a lot of sparks, but they're both married. So over the course of a dinner with the two couples, Tessa realizes that the wife of her intellectual love interest is more formidable than she thinks at first. And here lies the tension and the narrative force of the novel as it moves through this tension between these two women. It's really well written, and it explores race, ideas of femininity, identity and desire and what infidelity means. And it's really quite good. And there's a stack at Warwick, so please go and pick that up if you haven't, in hardcover. It's now out in trade paper.
I need to check in with Nancy Warwick to see if she read that yet, because she was a big fan of Miss Burma. So,
Well, let me know, because I can always send her a copy. So
oh, cool.
yeah,
Thank you.
happy to do that.
Awesome. That's such a good, the cover art is so good.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, Gabe.
So my next book is going to be a Revolution by Ijeoma Oluo, an author who is been a #1 best-selling author. So you want to talk about race, and then her other book was Mediocre. She is. Did I actually remember to unmute myself?
Yes.
So in this book, she's trying a few different things, but primarily she is examining people that have created change and are actively at the forefront of change and revolution. We see it coming from both sides. The tie-in here, though, to every aspect is race. So she'll talk about feminism, but how feminism and race how race ties into feminism, and how they bounce off each other, similarities, and how they relate to one another. She'll talk about disabilities, something that she actually talks very much about, because her perception of disability and disabled has changed and progressed. So kind of showing the imperfectness of somebody, even somebody as thoughtful as Ijeoma. We still have little gaps, and we still have little perceptions of how we're raised or whatever that are pretty deep-seated, and overcoming those kind of things. So it is a look at race, a topic that she's always dealt with, also race and childhood, poverty, feminism, etc. It is ordinary people. So she'll give examples of ordinary people who have just done these extraordinary things. There's I can't remember the person's name, but he was incarcerated, and for some reason in jail he started reading about women and sort of more academic intellectual feminism, and trying to understand the thing. And he himself has become a focal point in directing better education about the male dominant society and the patriarchy. We'll call it the patriarchy, but it runs deeper than that, etc. And how women have been marginalized, etc., and creating an understanding of the situation in the broader sense for other people to understand. So it's about people who are educating at the same time. So it's a pretty ambitious book. And I think some of those examples are just really solid ways of people doing the extra step, but also, little things that we can do and be mindful and respectful and things like that. I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed. There's something I missed here. What is it? Oh, and yeah, ultimately, what is the most interesting thing about this book is she kind of takes it out of she wants to take the race discussion out of the pain and trauma column and maybe move it into a more joyful situation, not to make light of anything, but maybe move positively towards better receptions and stuff. So it's a book you got to look at. There seems sort of contradictory in some ways, but I think she makes it work, and very thoughtful, and a good look at who this author is.
Seems contradictory. What do you mean?
I mean, sort of there's a lot of arguments, conversations that are had, and it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of it's not a complicated book. It's just what she's trying to do is kind of, I don't know if it's all encompassing, but she's trying to do a lot here. We've got examples, so it's slightly prescriptive, it's slightly narrative, it's slightly case study, There's a lot going on here. So I think you sort of see, like I said, the biggest example I think is her that I can think of real quickly is her views of a disability. She's again very open-minded, but her view towards the disabled and disabilities were kind of like, it's not. I don't want to speak for her. You can look at it. I don't want to be misquoted or anything, but she had her views, and somehow she kind of came around. I can't explain it.
That's okay. I was just curious. So it sounds like she's transcending binary thinking, basically, like
for me,
of the coin.
Yeah, in a certain way she is, but it's all getting to the end point in the various ways that people have gotten around a lot of these roadblocks. Like you sort of think, I mean, you have all these like crazy moms for liberty or whatever they're called, and people that are fighting City Hall, and they consider themselves revolutionaries, but they're not fighting a revolution. They're fighting them to maintain the status quo, basically, right? And they don't see it that way. They think they're fighting for their lives, but because they want their lives to stay the same, very much so. So she's at the other end of the spectrum.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, there have been a lot of books like this, but I don't think that there can't be too many books like this at this time in history, I feel like.
Still don't learn.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabe. Okay, Patricia.
First, just because we're acknowledging and paying our respects, this is Stanley Crawford's great book, Mayor Domo. In the early edition. Mayor Domo was the keeper of the acequia, the irrigation ditch in the old Hispanic villages of New Mexico, and Stanley Crawford had that role, and expands on being a Mayor Domo and keeping the water flowing. Great writer. I'm going to talk about another great thinker of America, Ralph Waldo Emerson, in a magnificent new portrait of him by James Marcus. This book will be out in about a month. I got a copy today, so I'm kind of excited about seeing the final hard copy. And Marcus has a very ferocious, fresh portrait of an Emerson we might think we know, and he brings him into a new view. Suggests that he's been buried beneath his Victorian reputation. We know the era, Thoreau, the Alcotts, the Transcendentalists of New England, the abolitionist period. Marcus shows us someone who is self-interrogating, visionary, but ballasted by Yankee shrewdness, a rebel, he says. It's a distinctive biography. We're getting some nice advanced praise as being a discerning portrait from Publishers Weekly. The psychologically astute, says Booklist. There's a lot to look at here. It kind of amuses me that he refers to him in the text, which is a first person sort of exploratory writer looks at a figure kind of text, and he usually calls him Waldo. Waldo contrasts interestingly with the younger, but always thought together with him, a friend, Thoreau. Thoreau is kind of more flinty, more practical, more sardonic, whereas we have the dreamy, high friendship and deep feeling of Emerson. He takes him on in a lot of ways. Of course, we focus on Emerson for grief, the great losses in his life, and but also he takes him to task for his slowness to come to a moral reckoning with abolition, and then how that came together. And it in that sense, a very interesting way of looking at the morality of the country. We have so much to think about when we think about Emerson. He says, every spirit builds itself a house, and beyond its house a world, and beyond its world a heaven. And I think a core of the book really is seeking the meaning of life. This is the kind of book we're drawn to. What did Emerson mean by the meaning of life? A strange process too, this, by which experience is converted into thought. He has an elegant metaphor of a mulberry leaf converted into satin, which would have been much more in the tone of the times. Looks great. We have great advance praise, and I think we'll be seeing a lot of this book when it releases.
Well, you sold me. That's a great presentation, and it sounds like a fascinating portrait. Whoops, sorry.
Do you know what the title comes from? Lad to the Point of Fear?
Oh, do I not know that?
I was trying to look it up because that's such a great expression.
Yeah, I think it is a
curious.
quote, but I don't, why do I not have that?
That's okay.
tagged?
I was just curious.
Sorry to say that it's not at the tip of my tongue, and I'm
No
It's gotta be,
worries.
gotta be something he
You
said.
just got it today. That was a very eloquent presentation for just
I was
just
not
getting it to
unaware
your
of it
hands.
before that.
I don't think it's the first time Patricia's read Emerson.
Thank
Okay.
you. Julia.
Okay, I have something completely different.
Cool.
Less Emerson and more Southern California thriller. People were
Mhm.
so excited about the last one I presented that I decided I would bring another out. This one comes out in paperback tomorrow. It's called Everybody Knows by Jordan Harper. And this was when I first started at Hachette in June. One of the things I said was like, my sort of depth of knowledge of mystery thrillers is shallow. This isn't a genre I normally read, and almost every single rep that I said that to said, read Everybody Knows by Jordan Harper. It takes place, it's in LA, and it follows a woman who's a PR person, and her boss gets murdered, and she sort of gets sucked into this underworld of Los Angeles crime, and she has a lot of secrets that she's kept for other people because she is an LA Hollywood publicist. So she knows a lot of dirt about people that she has kept from getting out. It moves like crazy. It is. You can sit down and sort of plow through this one. But a really great book, really well written. As you can see, it got starred reviews and was an Indie Next Book. Starred reviews in Kirkus, PW, and Booklist. Was an Indie Next Book, and was a book page pick. So it got great reviews in hardcover. It's now out in paperback. I don't know about you, but I prefer to read a mystery thriller in a paperback because I'm mean to my books, and I fold them and crease them, and I do all the things that makes book people squirm.
Cringing.
I'll go straight to jail, but I do it. And so yeah, just a really great one. Everybody Knows by Jordan Harper. It's coming out in paperback tomorrow, and I think for anyone who loves a good thriller, this one should keep you on the edge of your seat.
Great new
Don't-
cover too.
Yeah.
He is so good. His first book, his debut was with Harper, and I was one of those authors that kind of came and went real quickly. I wish because it was such a good book. It was nominated for an Edgar.
Yeah.
It did terrific. I mean, the reviews were terrific. But what a great read. And we all fell in love with Jordan Harper. It's one of those books where you're like, Julia said, you should try that. You should read this amongst ourselves. And I have not read this yet, but it's on my shelves. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thanks, Gabe.
I don't think it's necessarily being mean to the book. Like a book like this, you're hopefully going to get completely just captivated, and you take it everywhere with you. You take it out into the world, you clutch it to you when you're freaked out, you take it to the bathroom, you take it into bed and like fall asleep with it in the bed. Like,
Soy sauce on it and stuff. Ketchup,
Yeah.
French fry grease.
I tend to carry books in my back pocket, so
Yeah.
they get a little bit mangled.
Uh-huh.
But
Dee wants to tell you, Julia, Dee got the Leslie Jones memoir from Libro FM and says, amazing. She took stories from the book and then did stand up on them. It is not the same as the book. Certainly lots of triggers, but so good. Thanks.
yeah, it is not the same as the book. She takes liberties.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
fun.
Bonus.
Yes. Thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I really love her.
Lightning round. Back to Andrea.
Okay, I want to talk about a graphic story called Wildful by Kengu Kuromoto. This is from Groundwood Books, one of our acclaimed publishers from north of the border in Toronto. And this felicitously came from the slush pile. So there's hope for all aspiring writers that it can happen, believe it or not. And just want to show you a little bit of the art here. It's really beautiful, very detailed and delicate art. I love it. It's a celebration of the wilderness, very minimal text, and it's a celebration of wilderness, like I said, but it also explores issues of grief and mental illness of a parent. Our protagonist's mother is experiencing undue depression after her mother, our protagonist's grandmother, passes away. And our protagonist is able to feel a lot better by going out into the woods. And so I think this is just, it's basically forest bathing in graphic format. It's really beautiful and is totally immersive in that way. I love it. I also think that this is something that can extend well beyond the 9 to 12 grades 9 to 12 category that they say here. I think that this could be a crossover for adult collectors of books and anybody who's interested in graphic stories as well. So and that's from Groundwood, and that is out, that I think it's out on February 6th, but it doesn't matter, we don't have a hard and fast street date, and it is on sale and in the store. Okay.
So I'm just looking at it, I suspect it was in the slush pile because it's not normal when it comes to the way it fits in the 9 to 12 age group, because
No, yeah,
it's more, it has a lot fewer words than you think,
yeah,
but the themes are more grown up.
right.
It's very beautiful.
It's gorgeous. Yeah. I love the sepia art is really gorgeous, and I just think this is a special book, and I think it's going to do well. And now I just hope that Groundwood, who's very small, can keep this in print. So
dogs,
so
it's got
crows.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Telling you folks, you're not going to hear about these books in your normal channels. This Tea Time is the cutting edge. On to Gabe again.
Oh man, you might hear about this one in your regular channel.
Okay.
You made me look bad, girl.
That's all right.
No, this is a huge, it's going to be a big bestseller. The last book, everyone in my family has killed someone, from Australian writer Benjamin Stevenson, was a real surprise. We knew it was something special, but it continues to sell in hardback. Its paperback just came out a couple of weeks ago. But it's a really fun write. He's a really unique kind of a writer. It's a little bit interesting, funner, a more fun mystery than usual. He has a little bit of a twist. And in the new book, everyone on the train is the suspect. He sort of tips his hat to Agatha Christie, adding his own flavor in there. So what we have here is 6 authors on the Australian Mystery Writer Society has invited 6 authors aboard the Ghan, which is the large train, the famous train that goes from Adelaide, from Darwin to Adelaide. So it's kind of their Orient Express version of that, which I just found out about actually just right before I read this book. And one of the great train rides to take. And so there's these, he's the debut mystery writer. He's written a true crime book. And then there's a forensic science writer, a blockbuster novelist, a legal thriller writer, a literary writer, thriller writer, and a psychological suspense writer. and then one of their fellows is killed, and all of a sudden, all 5 remaining writers become detectives because who's better to find the murder than people who write this for a living, but also who better to plan a murder than people who write murders for a living. So he plays off both things. A lot of fun, and it's one of those books you want for the train ride, the plane ride, the kick back on a weekend, or can't wait to get to it at the end of the day.
I didn't realize those are so meta, but I should have known. Like books about writers writing. That's one of my favorite mystery genres.
When
Cool.
Deborah published, which was, I don't know how long ago, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, her book on, I can't remember the title, at Random House, at Crown, where is it? Blind Submission. I'm 65, almost. Blind Submission, like everybody was like, nobody wants to read. Regular people don't want to read about books. Regular people don't want to read about books. Regular people don't want to read about books. And like now, my list, I probably have 6, 8 books that are the Nazi librarian, the Victorian librarian, the little town where the librarian's the stars.
The bookseller memoirs, the bookseller murders, all that.
All that, yeah. So,
it keeps on going.
And it keeps going. Too bad she's not my author. I present that book. That's not one of my books.
I put the link to it in the chat here.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. You're sweet.
Okay, Patricia, last one.
Oh, that was a nice segue for a book I can't put my hand on at this very second. But Princeton just got National Book Critics Circle short list finalist in criticism for 2 books. One of them is The Chapter, which is certainly a wonderful book about books, an entire history of segmenting lives. They got a second nomination for Pleasure and Efficacy, which is an extraordinarily dense and fascinating book by Lavery on trans criticism.
Wow.
But the book I'm going to talk about is Deer Hoard. Deor Hoard. This is an old English bestiary, a book of ancient words. She did Vidine, Hannah Vidine, began doing a sort of a tweet a day of a medieval word, and it caught on. And she did a wonderful book called Word Hoard, which we enjoyed greatly, and which is now out in paper. This is coming out at the end of the month. It's really quite wonderful, and I think a source book for all those fantasy goth writers. It begins with perhaps more ordinary animal words. I'm not going to try to pronounce them in Old English, but she looks at eagles and spiders, ganga wefre, which means a walker weaver. She looks at very extraordinary and classic mythological animals, certainly the lion and others, whales and snakes. But I love the baffling ones. There's water monsters, moonheads, teeth tyrants, street makers, which are include hedgehogs. Here is a very satisfying picture of hedgehogs gathering fruit. Naturally, we love it. I just find the book quite endearing. There's lots of images throughout. There's lots of legends and symbols and mythology. We hear Boethius telling us a legend of Saint Daria and the lion, of the milk of mercy and deer. Quite a lot on the phoenix, which I hadn't realized. Of course, we know that it emerges from the fire, but I did not realize the corpse, a broken bone vessel, grows cool as the conflagration subsides. And then out of a worm grows the wondrously fair fledgling of the phoenix covered with feathers. So you'll learn a lot in this book. And I think there's lots of gorgeous words and gorgeous ideas about medieval animals and a vocabulary that you did not have before. It's gotten lots of praise in the UK. It's going to get lots here. It's totally delightful for etymology. One of the reviews says there are repeated digs at Alexander the Great, but I do not yet know what those are. And endlessly fascinating.
Wow,
That
that's a
looks
beautiful book.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just throw in, since it's an opportune time, we're hosting Dr. Seth Lehrer on February 6th. If you want to hear someone who speaks fluidly in that English of
Oh,
that
wonderful.
time.
I
Yeah,
have his books. He's written on children's literature, hasn't he?
yes.
Yes, I've got some of his books.
Yeah. Okay. Last
Wonderful.
book from Julia.
Okay. Again, this one is it's fun.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good one to close out on.
The internet has
It
gone
is-
crazy for this book.
The internet has gone crazy for this book. This is called That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. It is romantasy. So a little bit romance, a little bit fantasy, it's a little bit spicy, it's got some sexy times in it. And it is just a very fun book about a young woman who accidentally saves this demon, and then his shirt keeps burning off, and she has to try to help him on his sort of journey that he's on. It is, I think you can sit down and read it in one sitting. It is it's not really my genre, but I had a great time reading it. What I love about it, all these books sort of, we have a couple of these ones that they sort of remind me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and what I loved about that show, which was that it simultaneously takes its genre very seriously and also pokes fun at the tropes of the genre. And so I love a book that'll do that. I grew up in the 90s, and basically all television did that in the 90s that was aimed at teenagers. And so I just think it's a great time. It's a really fun one. It was it's part of the Indie Next list. Yeah, it came out earlier this month. TikTok, if you're in the book talk realm, you've probably seen it and heard about it. But it is out, number one, and then the next one comes out next month. We've got 3 in the series, and they're coming out one a month for 3 months. So
Yeah, I didn't realize this is the first in a series. So
trilogy.
yeah, the next one is called That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf, in case anyone out there is wondering.
Yes. And the third is called That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human. So fun times. I felt like that was a good one to end in the lightning round on, because it's like, what more do I really need to say than tell you the title and show you that cover? But yeah,
It's a fun book.
Cool. Thank you. What a diverse selection we had today. Yeah, that was quite the range. Cool. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you everyone for joining us. And that was a very full, but I think we finished in a timely fashion. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thanks for the invite. We always appreciate being invited to come and talk about books.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful to see everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Bye. And stop the live.
I gotta work on my wave. I don't feel